So we're continuing our lessons on writing well, and this will lead to the active voice and the active voice assignment. Let's start with this idea. All information that is not common knowledge is hearsay, unless a reliable source is documented. So yeah, we can say that's a cat. We don't need to document that. That would be common knowledge. Anybody can look at it and say that's a cat. You might, though, be presenting on some more obscure form of life, some slime mold perhaps, and you need to be ready to document it with something like the Utah flora that you looked it up, you went through the key. So yes, that not that you'll be documenting to a visitor, but you need to be ready to if you get queried farther. Continuing with that same line of thinking, if the information is common knowledge, like that's a cat, then you're not presenting anything new and engaging to your visitor. So you really do need to go to the library, get online, and learn something new and interesting that will be new and interesting to your visitor as well, or your audience, no matter who you're speaking to. Otherwise, you're not really engaging your audience. Bring them something new, something novel. Yes, your writing matters. It certainly matters here. It certainly matters across your life. When we do meet with our advisory folks, which are professionals out in the field, foresters, national park folks, one of the things that they find they're spending too much time on is rewriting people's reports. So they do look for university students who can write. This can be written both directions. Writing well emerges from clear thinking and deep understanding, and writing also helps you to create that clear thinking and deep understanding. Those two feed back and forth to each other. So practice writing. Your writing must be a joy to read. It should also be a joy to write, to be successful, to write really rotten sentence or paragraph, and then go back and fix it into something beautiful. And yes, writing well is the only way to pass this class. Writers who write well are often just rewriters, and they rewrite and rewrite and rewrite all the time. I took a writing class where we had very successful writers come in every other week to the class. We were very fortunate. And I do remember very strongly one of the women who's saying, you know, I'm not a particularly good writer, but I am a really good rewriter. So keep that in mind. First time around, second time around, third time around. At the more extreme, the professor who was teaching that class was giving an evening reading of a book he had just sent the manuscript in to be printed. And in the middle of his public reading at the library, he stopped and pulled a pencil out from behind his ear and changed something in the manuscript and said, oh, I hope I can get that to the publisher in time. So yes, rewriting. Writers agonize over every word, phrase, and punctuation mark. So if you're just writing something out and tossing it, turning it in, then, well, you got some more to do. Stop, take a look, every word, every phrase, every punctuation mark, and how it flows into the next sentence. Pretty basic stuff here for Mrs. Brown in fourth grade. Sentences contain a noun and a verb, and they'll use the term subject and predicate. That hopefully is obvious, but I do get sentence fragments quite often in classes. Sentences begin with a capital letter. Again, less common at college, but I still see it. And sentences do need to end in a punctuation mark. Periods, question marks, ellipses, dashes, hyphens. There aren't a lot of them. You've got a few choices. Writers use the paragraph as a unit of organization, which should sound like Tilden's principal whole. So you have a topic sentence, and then the rest of the paragraph is about that topic sentence. Sometimes you'll put your topic sentence second in a little primer to get people interested into the first one. Always go back and read your computer screen. I am amazed how many things that get turned in still are covered in red, green, and blue lines. So go back, look at your screen, and fix it. Yes, we all make those mistakes. So try to remember, go back, don't try, do it. Go back and fix it. Even with a computer, you still have to check your words for spelling errors. Sometimes you get the wrong form of the word or a different word spelled but spelled correctly. So if you are turning in an important paper, even in a really important email, sometimes you have to start at the back and read forward. Otherwise, you move too quickly. But you need to check every single word, reading back to front uh, to isolate the individual words. Read your writing out loud. How does it sound? Does the sentence flow together within the sentence? And how does it compare to the sentences around it? And does the paragraph feel like one topic? Sometimes you'll need to go back and look at your writing and say, wow, there really are two topics here. I need to split this paragraph. And other times you'll realize, oh, I split it too soon. These two could go together. Pronouns are a problem. I'm finding that a lot as I read back or listen back on these first draft presentations that I'm having you listen to. So here we go for pronouns. To which this does that refer? So they can be pretty there I'm doing it again. Your pronouns can be pretty ambiguous. So do read through and reuse the noun probably more often than you're used to. Finding someone else who cares, who can help you with your writing and your self-improvement is a hard person to find. Sure, read it to your dog, but yeah, better yet if you can find someone to give you a hand with it. And then it can be very helpful to when you think you're done with a piece, you've read it so many times, you've stopped reading it, put it away for a day or two, or the luxury of 2 or 3 days, and then go back and read it again. Sometimes you'll catch mistakes that you just were flying through uh, in the earlier reads because you just got too familiar with it. So the Elements of Style is the book by Strunk and White that you're required to have for this class. And I'm going to just look at the chapter titles for you. First one is Elementary Rules of Usage. So this is going to be about punctuation for the most part. Second chapter is Elementary Principles of Composition. You're going to see tilde in here, things like choose a suitable design and hold to it. The third one is a few matters of form. And the fourth one, words and expressions commonly misused. And then the last one, which we did cover, not cover, but we hit 10 of the 21 items here. The fifth chapter is titled An Approach to Style with a List of Reminders. So Daniel Matthews writes a natural history guidebook. So you're going to find that they're identifying plants and animals for the most part. And you would think, oh, a key wouldn't be all that interesting of a book, but you've got to go read Daniel Matthews because he, among many other authors, is such a wonderful writer. So the one that's local to us, the Rocky Mountain Natural History Guide from Grand Teton to Jasper, is a great book to go see what you can do in a book telling stories that is really wonderful and a little bit unexpected. So in our class, you're going to be writing on posters or signs or pages. Depends how you decide to think about your assignment. We're going to spend some time now on the active voice. We've already talked about employing robust verbs and nouns. Don't let that get away from you. And then put statements in the positive form, which will often be active voice. You might recall that many of Tilden principles are written in the negative, things to not do or things to leave out. And that for the most part, when I presented them in class, I converted them all to the positive. Active voice, you've probably heard about this for decades now. It isn't just about yelling. This is the definition that we're going to work from, but you're going to see that we're going to use a little shortcut to make it a little bit easier to pick it out. So, worth reading. The active voice describes a sentence where the subject performs the action stated by the verb. It follows a clear subject-verb-object construct that's easy to read. In fact, sentences constructed in the active voice add impact to your writing. With passive voice, the subject is acted upon by the verb, and it makes for a murky, roundabout sentence. Without a bunch of examples, I don't find those definitions to be very useful. So yes, we're going to use the active voice for more direct and vigorous writing, and I'm going to show you a bit of a shortcut. It mostly works. It's a great way to get going. After you see this a bunch of times, then you can go back to that definition. It'll make more sense to you. So here's our shortcut to looking for passive voice. So take a look at your writing, anybody else's writing, and after a sentence or a paragraph is written, circle the passive verbs. So these are states of being. Is, as, was, were, be, being, has, had, have, having, did, got. I hate the word got. Use it too often. So yeah, we're looking for these passive states of being and going back and circling them in our sentences. So there's one. We're going to now rewrite that sentence with a vigorous verb and get rid of that passive phrase, that passive state of being. And it's amazing how often that verb you're looking for is actually already in your sentence. So after writing a sentence or a paragraph, circle the passive verbs. So it even shortened the sentence. Yes, it also got shortened because that's box that's over there in the lower corner. After writing a sentence or a paragraph, circle the passive verb. So we've moved writing forward, so it becomes important. Okay, I'm going to set some examples up here. We'll take a look at them, and then I'm going to have you rewrite them. So do get, pause this if you need to, grab some paper and pencil. You should be taking notes already. You're about to rewrite some sentences. Reds are things, the red color are things that I'm not so fond of in these sentences. And then I have circled the passive verbs. So I don't think I need to read these to you, but I still will go through them one at a time and then stop the video at the end and rewrite them. That bracket sick mean that's a recognition that that's an incorrect word, but it's in the original. So is the passive word here, and it ends up making for an extra wordy sentence. One of the things you'll discover as you are correcting, eliminating passive verbs is you'll also shorten your sentences. Shortening your sentences is pretty valuable because we never have enough space in interpretation, especially on signs. And if I remember right, when I adjusted these two sentences, I ended up combining them. This is not a bad sentence. Pair of sentences, especially the second sentence, is already active voice. So not a bad set. This is getting pretty picky here. Yeah, rewrite this whole concept. Don't just fix one sentence at a time. Oh, you may not be able to see this one and be able to do it. Sorry about that. So stop the video here, rewrite all of these sentences off the screen, at least the first 7, and pause the video, come back to it. So take a look at these. These are my rewrites. Pause the video here if you haven't read through them, because I'm going to move on. So after running through that method of looking for passive verbs, we can now maybe take a closer look at the original definition of passive voice. So in the positive form, in a sentence written in the active voice, the subject of the sentence performs the action. In a sentence written in the passive voice, the subject receives the action. So right here we have the candidate, who is the subject, believes. That is the action. And what do they believe? That Congress must place a ceiling on the budget. But even that, we can take a look at it, because there's kind of a second sentence in there, that Congress must place a ceiling on the budget. So now we're saying Congress is the subject if we look at just this part, and they must place, that's our active verb, must place a ceiling on the budget, the object. So you can see that's an active voice all the way through. Now this is an interesting one. The road was crossed by a chicken. You usually hear that as the chicken crossed the road, which is the active verb. But just playing with this, where the regular way, the chicken crossed the road, the chicken is doing the action of crossing the road. And the chicken is actually our subject, but in this version, it's written in that the road would be our subject and the chicken is the object. And there really is a way to twist this to make that an active sentence. So if you've come up to a road and somebody keeps waiting and they're not ready to cross the road, and you keep seeing that there's plenty of time to get across, you can turn that into an active sentence by saying, come on, hurry up. The road was crossed by a chicken. So now the action is about the road, that it's such an easy road that even a chicken could cross it. So yeah, active and passive can be a little bit messy. So sometimes if everything is written in active voice, you feel like you've been hit over the head with a hammer, because it's just so powerful. So there are times to use passive voice. And when you go back and you circle all those passive verbs, you might think, okay, but I actually like it better this way. Go ahead, leave 20% of your sentences in passive voice. And here are a couple of other reasons, other than it just sounds good to your ear. Sometimes you want to emphasize the action rather than the actor. So after a long debate, the proposal was endorsed by the Long Range Planning Committee. So our subjects aren't that important. It's the endorsement that's important here. Okay, to keep the subject in focus consistent throughout the passage, the data processing department recently presented what proved to be a controversial proposal to expand its staff. After a long debate, the proposal was endorsed by, anyway, the sentence can keep going. So C, to be tactful by not naming the actor. So the procedures were somehow misinterpreted. Yeah, if we put this into positive, we would have to say the doctor misinterpreted the procedures. So yeah, we're instead choosing to be a little more passive rather than aggressive or active. D, to describe the condition in which the actor is unknown or unimportant. Again, we're emphasizing now the verb. Every year, thousands of people are diagnosed with having cancer. So yeah, the subject, actually in this sentence, the object is what's important. Okay, E, to create an authoritative voice. And visitors are not allowed after 9 p.m. Okay, we've made it through the lesson, and we're ready to move into the assignment. You will find this assignment on Canvas. I think the next slide describes it. So here's what it is. This is another chance to rewrite, sit down, type it out, each of these sentences. So what I'm asking you to do here, and this is all described in the assignment section on Canvas for 4430 week 12 active voice assignment. We would have done this in the classroom and then shared all of our solutions again, but we're not in the classroom. So here we go. You're getting credit for it instead of spending class time together, which is too bad. I love sharing these. So I'm not going to read these. They are typed out in the assignment on the assignment page in Canvas, 4430 week 12, active voice. So write down the sentence as you see them here, and then right below it, write your corrected active voice version. Thanks again.